I'm back.
Well, first of all, sorry I'm late, but
I'm happy to be back. I'm here to play.
there are some things I want to say.
I'm gonna make it real brief. Y'all had 2 weeks to do y'all's talking, let me do mine.
I'm gonna take my talents to South Beach.
To be a terrible role model, but still,
I'm gonna take my talents to South Beach. It feels right.
Good morning, it's Friday. Welcome to Unsportsmanlike Conduct. I'm Paul Gerke alongside Mike McManaman. If you are tuning in to watch Tom Sumner's Worldwide Webcast, I'm sorry you're stuck with us, but I invite you to stay tuned. This is Unsportsmanlike Conduct, where we cover the world of sports without the rose-tinted glasses of the four-letter network and the mainstream media. We're going to hit on a variety of topics today, but first my co-host Mike is going to tell you how you can tune in and listen and get your opinions in on the show.
Actually, you're going to have to do that because I don't have my laptop. I don't have any of the information.
What happened to your laptop, Mike?
I woke up this morning. There was a Trojan virus. It was
The USC Trojans? Because
yes,
we're going to get to that later in the show.
It was a USC Trojan virus. So luckily, I'm a bit of a pack rat, so maybe I still have the CDs with me. I can find them and reformat my hard drive. If not, I'm out like $400. So.
Was it Matt Leinart? Because I know he's upsetting Ken Wisenhunt over in Arizona, too.
It was probably, or Reggie Bush. It could have been either of them.
So when I was younger, people wore Trojans to avoid viruses.
That is clever.
That is clever.
John Wilson running the show back there behind the glass. I'm surprised I didn't think of that.
Yeah.
Nice work. Well, we're going to touch on a variety of topics today. I guess first I'll tell you how you can get on the show. If you're watching, it's on flinttalkradio.com. There is also a live chat there where you can talk to us. We will respond to you as quickly as possible. You can also hit me up on my Facebook, Paul Gerke, or Mike McManaman on Facebook. Chat with us there, or you can call in. We love to get your opinions on the show.
And we have a Facebook page on
We do have a
Sportsmanlike
Facebook
Conduct.
page. If you haven't liked it yet, you're no friend of mine.
Yeah, I don't like you anyways.
810-208-1854 is the number. I said to you last night, I had that number memorized, and Erin Franzen, my girlfriend who's watching the show eventually on the archive, I don't have her phone number memorized
I
yet.
don't have Jessica's phone number remembered either. So.
But I have this radio show's number
Yeah.
memorized, and this is our third show.
Yeah,
Ouch.
yeah, she's gonna be pretty mad about that.
If we lived together, I'd be sleeping on the couch.
Yeah, that's true.
Let's get into some sports topics. Last night, the Detroit Lions wrapped up their preseason. They won against the Buffalo Bills, the scourge of the NFL, really. 28-23 was the final. The Lions were down 16-0 at one point. Came back to get the victory. They finished their preseason 3-1. Mike, what do you think about that?
They went 4-0 the season that they lost. They had the defeated season. I don't think it means a whole lot, especially the last game, because most of the starters aren't really playing that much. I mean, it's good for morale, I guess, but we didn't get the opportunity to watch a lot of the game last night. We were out covering some high school football. But I guess, what is his name? Paul Pratt had a 102-yard
interception return for a touchdown. That was the real changing point in the game.
I guess
last
the
night.
fourth game is just to see who they're going to keep on the practice squad. So I
Right.
guess that's the only real.
Well, I guess I'd argue that having the third and fourth stringers in there for the fourth preseason game is good to see that the Lions could pull out a victory because, I mean, that shows team depth, right?
I hope so. But the problem is that I'm sure Buffalo had their third or fourth, and a lot of those guys aren't going to make the team. I think it's a good sign for like some of these guys that they're going to be on the team. It'd be nice if the Lions had some depth and that these players were actually going to produce because we know that the Lions are going to get injured. They always do.
Right.
There's going to be a lot of starters that go down.
Well, hell, half the practice squad made it to the NFL last season.
That's true.
You're going to have to call David Kirkus back and
Yeah,
get him in a wide
David.
receiver, Grand Valley State
Yeah.
grad. Landon Cohen, a big D tackle for the Lions. Jim Schwartz wasn't sure if he was going to make the squad. He had 4 tackles, a couple of them for loss, and 2 sacks last night, really making a case for himself. What do you think about Landon Cohen or any of the other defensive linemen getting snaps in with that revamped Lions defensive line?
They're not. I mean, they're not going to get. I mean, I could see one of the defensive linemen getting hurt. One of the big. I mean, they're probably going to get quite a few snaps because I know it's Lions. Something bad's going to happen. One of the big guys are going to go down. But it's the preseason. I didn't see anything. There was one really sweet play, and you called it the sweetest play you've ever seen in football.
Yeah, that was
which
kind of
might have been an exaggeration, but it was pretty sweet. I don't know who had
Yeah.
the interception.
That was a knee-jerk reaction. It was a backup linebacker for the Lions. A. Palmer was his name, according to the ESPN box score. Palmer. I don't know his first name.
His first name is A.
It was a pretty ridiculous interception. I'm sure it's on YouTube. It might be on Deadspin already. Ashley Palmer. He's got a woman's name.
Oh, no.
But he's a man, baby.
He's a man.
That was a hell of a catch. That really turned things around. It led to a Lions touchdown before the half. One thing I want to mention last night about the Lions preseason game was Drew Stanton. Drew Stanton ended up with
playing well.
He ended up with a QB rating of over 100, 103.8. He was only 5 for 3 completion-wise, but he threw for 94 yards and 2 touchdowns with no picks. And you know he can do it with his legs. What do you think about Drew Stanton? He's obviously going to make the team as the third-string signal caller, but what do you think about Stanton as an NFL player?
He's done that in the preseason before. He's played well. He's shown flashes, but he has to have consistency. I don't think he's ever going to get the chance. I mean, it'd be nice for him because it's Michigan State.
Right.
Everybody loves Drew Stanton, even if you're just a casual
Michigan fan.
Yeah,
Yeah.
You're a Michigan fan, and you
I
like
like
seeing
Drew Stanton.
Yeah, there's something about Drew Stanton that you just like.
I think it's the moxie about Drew Stanton. I think he has this sort of air about him. He leads these comebacks in the preseason. I mean, this isn't the first one. This isn't the second one or the third one. I think Drew Stanton's consistency problems come from injuries, really. I mean, he's been hurt in and out of his 2 or 3 seasons in the NFL. If he really stayed healthy this season, just in the preseason, I think he could earn himself a backup role somewhere in the NFL. I mean, look at guys like Ryan Fitzpatrick. Where did he play? Harvard? And that guy's competing for a starting job right now. And I don't see anything in Ryan Fitzpatrick that Drew Stanton doesn't have. I mean, honestly. And Drew Stanton has a little more, with his legs,
Yeah, I think a lot of it. Yeah, it is the preseason. I think he started a few games and he didn't do all that well.
So did Dan Orlovsky.
Yeah,
God knows where he is right now. Probably flipping burgers, right?
No, I think he's either the backup for the Texans or something like that.
We'll find out.
But part of that is your bias for Drew Stanton. We all have it. We all love Drew Stanton. I don't know anybody that really just doesn't like Drew Stanton. There's something about him. Maybe the fact that he can run and he has these exciting plays. Didn't he have a game-winning touchdown run?
Yeah, I think the second game in the preseason.
Yeah, he's played pretty well.
He's money down the stretch. Dan Orlovsky is currently a quarterback for the Houston Texans. He's obviously playing behind Matt Schaub.
I don't know how I knew that, but I did.
You're a big Dan Orlovsky sympathist. Don't lie to the people, Mike. I've seen your Dan Orlovsky jerseys.
That's true.
If you'd like to get on the Lions or any bevy of other topics, we're going to get to college football. College football started last night. There was a big slate of games. There's some big games coming up this weekend. We'll get into the University of Michigan schedule. We'll hit the Michigan State schedule. We're going to talk about a big game between Boise State and Virginia Tech. We're going to touch on USC football and the sanctions they're dealing with. And then we're going to talk about a big topic. We've got 2 hours to fill, people. College athletes, should they get paid? Some of the people watching right now have probably seen our Facebook discussion about it. We're going to get to those opinions a little later in the show, and we'd love to hear what you have to say. The number's 810-208-1854. But for now, we're going to stick with the Lions. Mike, where do you see the Lions finishing in the regular season?
I'd say I'm going to go 6-10. I don't see them winning 7 or 8 games. I know there's been a lot of talk. What is it, ESPN had a poll?
Yeah, yesterday, ESPN, they've been doing a series called 8 Divisions in 8 Days, where they go through the 8 divisions in the NFL. They touched on the NFC North yesterday, and the 2 ESPN analysts, I forget who they had that were actually discussing and making predictions, but one chose the Lions finishing 8-8, ahead of the Chicago Bears at 6-10. I believe he had the Green Bay Packers winning the division, Minnesota clinching a wild card berth. The other analyst had the Lions at 7-9. Again, the Chicago Bears at 6-10, with Minnesota winning the division and Green Bay clinching a wild card berth. I see both Green Bay and Minnesota in the playoffs, without a doubt. Those are solid contending teams. Green Bay could end up in a Super Bowl this season with the Aaron Rodgers, the way he's been playing lately, with Jermichael Finley sort of separating himself from other NFL tight ends. There's a lot of people that are predicting that he could catch more touchdown passes than Antonio Gates, Tony Gonzalez this season. Selleck over in Philadelphia, who also had a big year last year. Do you think the Lions will finish above anybody in the NFC North? When's the last time that's happened? Well, 2 years ago, or 3 years ago, but still.
I think the analysts have done this before. I think it was.
Was that when John Kidna was predicting the 10-win season?
Yeah, and they actually had a segment. I think it's Hank Greenberg, the horse racing guy, the fat guy. He had a segment one year before the preseason that predicted the Lions. He wanted everybody to put money in Vegas for the Lions to win the Super Bowl. They were the underdog favorite.
Right.
And this has happened before with the Lions being predicted to win a lot more games. Until they have a climate of winning, until they prove something, I can't go more than 5 or 6 games. I've been excited about the Lions before.
Right.
And this is a more exciting year. I think you have I like what Jim Schwartz is doing, what the team's doing a lot more than I have in previous years. The line's exciting. You have Stafford in his second year. You have Javid Best. You have some Kelvin Johnson. You have some other things going on.
Mm-hmm.
But I just can't. I can't say that they're going to win more than like 5 or 6 games.
Now, is this
it's the
related?
Lions.
Is this related? It is then. It's related to your predisposition about the Lions.
I've been
2-win season, a 0-win season.
Yeah, it's my previous experience because I've been there before where everybody was predicting 8, 7, 8, 9, 10 in John Kitna's case victories, and they've always disappointed.
So you're gun shy. What kind of fan are you?
I'm not.
You're just tired of getting your head beaten into the
No,
wall.
I'm just not a Detroit Lions lackey that's going to drink the Kool-Aid.
I'm
every
drinking
time.
the Kool-Aid.
I know you are, but that's
Let's look at the schedule.
part of talk radio.
Week 1 against Chicago in Soldier Field. Now, the Lions have had a horrendous road record for, it seems like, the last decade. Can the Lions
Especially
win
at
that game?
Soldier Field. I think they have not won many games over the last
Win or loss?
loss.
I think it's a win.
I think it's a lot.
I think it's a win. The Bears are bad this season. Urlacher missed most of the season last year with an injury. Jay Cutler has been horrific. He threw 26 interceptions last year. The Lions secondary is bad. It's probably their biggest weakness on this team.
Mm-hmm.
But Jay Cutler is not going to carve him up. Devin Aromashadu and Devin Hester are not.
I have no faith in the Lions secondary. I have no faith at all.
You don't need faith. Jay Cutler's not going to tear him up. The Lions offense, true or false, is going to put up a lot of points this season. Matthew Stafford, Calvin Johnson. Look at your other weapons. Bryant, Burleson, Pettigrew had a great preseason.
They're going to have games where they put up like 28, 35, but then I think they're going to have games where they totally just are not there. I think they're going to have a few games like that, but they're going to be a more high-powered offense. The thing to worry about is the secondary, the Lions, I think.
33-24 Lions, week 1. You heard it here first. I think the Lions get down early in that game, and I think they stage a comeback. I think they win. Matthew Stafford is going to throw 3 touchdowns and 1 pick.
I mean, that would be great if they could start off hot like that and get people excited.
Week
that
2,
would give them some leeway.
Philadelphia in Detroit. Win or loss?
Loss.
I say it's a loss as well. Lions are 1-1. Week 3, Detroit at Minnesota.
Loss.
Loss as well. Lions are 1-2. Detroit in Green Bay
Loss.
at Lambeau.
Loss.
Yeah, that's probably a loss as well. Lions are 1-3.
This is the next ones where I can see a victory.
St. Louis at Detroit, week 5 at Ford Field.
A victory.
I agree. 2-3. The Lions are 2-3 at this point. Detroit at Meadowlands
Loss.
against the Giants. 2-4. That's reasonable. I have no problem with that. Week 7 bye. All the critics are saying, the Lions are 2-4. They're not going to be anything this season. But this is where things get interesting. Washington at Ford Field in week 8. That's an obvious win.
I don't know.
Washington is bad.
They have some new, not just Donovan McNabb, they have some other players.
They
too.
got a whole bunch of free agents.
I think that's going to be a
Albert
shootout.
Hainsworth is a joke. An absolute
he's probably-
overpaid, overweight, under-conditioned joke.
He might not be there by week 8.
I agree. I completely
So-
agree. So there's your stalwart on your defensive line. Javid Best is going to rush for 150 yards. They've got London Fletcher.
I'll
they
give
picked
them
up
the
as a
win, but I
linebacker.
think it's going to be very close, and there's a good chance that the Lions will lose that game.
They have a solid linebacking core, but the problem, the Washington Redskins are essentially the Detroit Red Wings in that they sign veterans that are past their prime and expect them to perform at their peak prime levels, and they don't. Clinton Portis is back there. They signed Brian Westbrook in the offseason and eventually released him.
They have like 4 running backs that like 5 years ago in fantasy football, they would have been top
A dream
10
team.
picks.
Yeah.
But I think still
Donovan
they're going to
McNabb
have-
is his first year in a new system, and I think Donovan McNabb is past his prime. I really don't think
Well, he's
Donovan
past
McNabb
his
can
prime,
do
but
what he
he's
used
still
to
a
do.
better quarterback than Matthew Stafford,
Disagreed.
and he's
I'll
a
take
better
Stafford.
leader.
Okay, maybe a better leader, but I
think
think
he's both.
Stafford's got a better arm, and I think the decisions I saw him make in the preseason at the end of the season last year are better than what Donovan McNabb's going to do. I say, this is my bold prediction of the week, I say Stafford's numbers end up better than Donovan McNabb's this season. Maybe because he's got more weapons, because I don't really name a wide receiver.
Santana Moss.
Santana Moss, is he still there?
Yeah.
Santana Moss.
I think they signed another wide receiver in the offseason.
I don't doubt that, but I still think that's a win. I'm going to have the Lions at 3-4 at this point. The Jets visiting Detroit at Ford Field.
Loss.
Mark Sanchez against Matthew Stafford.
It's a loss.
I'm going to say it's a win. I say the Lions are 500 at this point. The Lions don't have to have to beat any major teams in order to get to a 500 record. I've looked at this schedule before.
The Jets are still a good. I mean, they're still
Sean Green and LaDainian Tomlinson might have a heyday. If you've got one of those two in
and
fantasy
they have
football,
a great defense.
you need to
and
start
They're
them in
going
week
to
9.
sign Revis. I think they've no.
If they
already,
sign Darrelle Revis.
yeah, there's a good chance. They're still going to have a great defense. They had one of the best last year in the league, and they're going to shut down. Even if they shut down, even if they shut down the Detroit Lions offense, it's like just some great offense. They're going to shut down the Detroit Lions offense, and then the Lions secondary is going to be able to.
With Mark Sanchez
I still think he'll have. I think he'll have his
and
best
Jericho
game.
Cotchery, does that really scare
He'll have
you?
his best game of the Lions secondary. I think any last season, if you look at the stats, I'm sure every quarterback's big game of the season was against the Lions.
That's possible, but
And they haven't gotten any better. They signed Dre Bly, but he's
Dre
way
Bly's been
past.
very good in the preseason. He's going to start at nickel. He's going to be just fine. And if Louis Delmas ends up healthy, that improves your secondary a great deal. And they've had Amari Spivey, their draft pick from this season, at safety now instead of corner, and that's his more natural position. He's a better tackler.
They have a horrible.
You
secondary,
forget what the
and they
defensive
can't
line
tackle.
can do for a bad secondary. I think the defensive line is really going to be a stalwart and hold it down for him.
They won't.
I think Sanchez looks bad against the Detroit secondary in that game.
I don't think so. I think he's gonna have his best game of the season. He's looked really bad in the preseason.
We'll revisit this on November 7th. Mike's got the Lions at 3-5 at this point. I've got them at 4-4. If you want to get in your Lions predictions, get on the Flint Talk chat
Oh wait,
page.
I have them at 2. They only had 2 wins. Wait,
You had them beating Washington, St. Louis, and you had them losing to Chicago. Did you?
yeah,
So you have them. You had them starting the season 1-5.
yep. Yeah, I know. I mean,
You need to drink in the Kool-Aid.
I'm going so against the grain.
Have a sip, Mike.
I'm using like
Week 10,
reason and-
Detroit at Buffalo. That's a win.
Yeah, I'll go with win.
Buffalo's
I'll give him that one. I
JP
need to-
Lossman. You saw Brian Brom last night. He's an embarrassment. See, they do have a good running back core, though. If Marshawn Lynch comes back healthy, everyone's raving about C.J. Spiller and the way he's played in the offseason, or in the preseason, rather.
I'll give Detroit. I'd say it's
The
gonna
benefit of a doubt there.
benefit of the doubt, but I think it's going to be a close game. But I'll give them. I don't like to predict them on the road to win any games, but
It's in Buffalo, though.
yeah, still.
Detroit at Dallas. I've got the Lions at 5-4 at this point. Lions at Cowboy Stadium in Dallas. That's a loss. It's 5-5. New England at Detroit at Ford Field.
No, that's a loss.
I also think that's a loss. I think Tom Brady, I think a real veteran quarterback is going to carve the Lions up. Now, they don't have a running game to speak of, which is good for the Lions because they have a terrible linebacking core. You might argue that the Lions linebackers are worse than their corners, to be honest. Julian Peterson et al.
Yeah.
Vinny Churchill, I'm not scared of him.
No, that's yeah.
So I've got the Lions at 5-6 at this point, or 5-7 rather. Chicago at Detroit and Ford Field.
I will give the Lions the Chicago victory.
I agree.
At
6-7 for Detroit at this point for me. Green Bay at Detroit.
Loss.
I think that game's going to be competitive.
No. Aaron Rodgers is going to kill him.
6-8 for me at this point. I think they'll lose that game as well. Detroit at Tampa Bay. Again, the Lions have a real soft road schedule if you look at it. I mean, they've got they play some high caliber teams on the road, granted, but those are mostly division rivals.
I think they can beat Tampa Bay.
Tampa Bay is embarrassing too. Tampa Bay is going to finish worse than Detroit this season.
Yeah.
So I've got them with 7 wins at this point. 7-8. Detroit at Miami. I think they can win that game too.
I think they're going to lose.
I think that might be
Miami's-
a good close game. Miami's all right.
Yeah.
Miami could be a playoff team, but it's Chad Henne. I mean, I'm not scared. When I look at this list, I apologize for stammering. When I look at this list, I see the big quarterbacks: Aaron Rodgers, Brett Favre, Tom Brady, carving up the Lions secondary, and I don't think they can win any of those games. But when I look at the other quarterbacks they have to face, guys like J.P. Lossman, guys like Bradford, guys like who's starting in Tampa Bay? Chris Sims? Is he still there? He's not there anymore.
No. It's
Chad Henne, these guys can't compete. These guys aren't NFL quarterbacks. I think Detroit can beat those
they'll
teams.
run on them. They'll lose.
Well, go ahead and run on them, but Detroit's offense is going to put up points this season.
I think Miami's got an all right defense.
I have
They'll be
Detroit
fine.
losing their last game of the season against Minnesota as
Yeah.
well.
So 5-11.
I got them at
have it out.
7-9, maybe 8-8. I don't think that's
5-11.
unreasonable.
I think it is, but you're
Drinking the
you're
Kool-Aid.
drinking the Kool-Aid. So What is that? What are people? Is anybody saying anything on Flint Talk Radio?
Somebody said we sound stupid. I won't lie to you. They need to liven it up a bit and cut the ers and pauses. You need to tell them. And then they left.
Wow.
They really were looking forward to seeing Tom Sumner this morning.
Yeah.
And they got stuck with us.
Sorry to hear that.
Maybe it was your goatee that scared him away.
Maybe.
You did shave, though.
I did shave.
I like that.
We sound stupid. How do we sound stupid, do you think?
It's probably mostly just the things that you say. You can get it on the talk, 810-208-1854. Open lines. Facebook is empty. Chat page is empty.
Fascinating thing about the internet that's always fascinated me when people go in forums or chat rooms or things like that, and the anonymity of the internet lets them be horrible people and just like open up and say things they wouldn't normally say in real life. And that really amazes me. Like, how do you get off to that? Like, what is your incentive to go to any? Oh, we got a phone call. All right.
I didn't hear it ring, John. We were just talking about things on the internet. I thought you were going to pipe in with something relating to. Mike said something about getting off on the internet. I thought that you were going to get all over that, man. Who do we got on the phone?
I don't know who you got. He said he wants to weigh in on the Lions, I think he said.
Great.
All right.
Put him through. How's it going? You're listening to Unsportsmanlike Conduct with Paul Gerke and Mike McManaman.
Hey, guys. How you doing out there?
Randall W.
Randy.
Scott III. Randy is a close personal friend of the show. Randy, thanks for calling in.
Okay, so I must say that so far the show is entertaining, and I think you guys don't sound stupid.
Thanks.
I probably will, however, so we'll have to deal with that.
Randy, before you get into your topics, we're down on the east side right now doing the show. You're an east sider yourself.
Born and raised on the east side.
Go ahead, Randy.
Okay, all right. First of all, Montana Ave forever. I got to throw that out there. We're done with the East Side talk. Okay, this Lions thing. Paul, you're right on a lot of things, but let me tell you something. Okay, I think you're judging a little too much on the preseason accolades of this team.
See, you're sounding stupid, Paul.
Here's what's going to happen. We all know, like you've been saying, the secondary is trash. We
Yeah.
know this.
Linebackers too.
But what you're already seeing in the preseason, and I watched the first 3 games pretty extensively. The fourth one I didn't see at all. So, but what you're already seeing is teams adjusting. The pass rush can be negated by a good game plan, and quick passing and beating up on those linebackers in the secondary quickly and not letting that pass rush get there is going to be their downfall. And you said stuff about how good quarterbacks will tear them up. That's exactly right. But good coaching staffs will also do that. And I think we're going to see that if they're going to make any headway at all, they're going to have to beat that. They're going to have to beat the game planning of the other coaches. And this is where Jim Schwartz is going to have a bigger part than I think than most people think, because that pass rush is good when you're dropping back.
Right.
We've seen it already in the preseason. When they throw short, that turns into big gains. We got bad tackling out there. I mean, when you got Zach Follett trying to cover people, we're in trouble.
He's
okay?
fun to watch,
and right
though.
now,
He's got a motor on him. You've got to admit that. For a 7th-round pick.
look, fantastic personality. As a linebacker, needs help.
Yeah.
He shouldn't even be out there on that first team. We know this.
I agree.
I mean, I would like a wooden cutout of myself as well, you know, but it ain't working it on the field right now.
Let me interrupt you here, though, Randy. What do you think about the Lions' defensive line, I guess, sort of changing the way that teams play against their secondary? Like you said, these slant routes are going to be open. They're going to hit guys over the middle, and the Lions are bad tacklers. Their back 8, back 9 is just bad. I think we can all admit that, outside of Lewis Dallas and Julian Peterson.
Though.
I understand, but I think the defensive line, and you saw what the Lions did. You didn't watch this game last night, Randy, but Buffalo was driving on Detroit for the first 4 or 5 possessions. And the Lions managed to hold them to field goals. Do you think that if the Lions defense can hold teams to field goals, they can still compete in these games because of their offense?
Yeah, I mean, I think, listen, they're muchly improved, okay?
Mm-hmm.
The key is going to be if they can do the bend but not break thing. And against teams like Buffalo, yeah, they're going to outscore them. They're going to win that game. But against better teams, I don't think they can do it.
Mm-hmm.
So what is your prediction?
Yeah, what do you think about the Lions? How are they going to finish?
How are they going to finish? 5-11?
All right.
I'm going to take you through the schedule. I'm going to take you through the schedule, Randy.
I do think the game against Chicago will be pivotal. If they can get that first win, I think that the momentum may drive them to 1 or 2 more wins during the season. If they can get 5 or 6, I think that's realistic, but not guaranteed. They could easily be 5 or 6 win team or a 3-win team, and I really see that.
Yeah, I agree.
Why are you hating on the Lions so much, Randy?
Because he's a real
Is it
one.
just the defense? I mean, you've seen teams with bad defenses win a lot of games. I mean, look at like the Cincinnati Bengals last season. I mean, they had a great defense and a bad offense, so that's sort of the reverse. But
yeah,
you don't need both sides of the ball in order to win 7, 8 games. I'm not saying the Lions are going to be a playoff team.
I don't think the Lions offense. I don't think the Lions offense is some high-powered like Cincinnati Bengals. It's not even close. I mean, it wouldn't be close to the Cincinnati Bengals.
What's not good about the Lions offense? You've got 3 wide receivers that can play number 1. You've got 2 solid tight ends. The Lions' offensive line is not that bad. It's really not.
Yes, it is.
No, it's not. Jeff Backus is solid. He's solid. No, he is solid. I know we think he's a big pussy, but he's solid. The guy doesn't give up sacks. He's all right running the ball. Javid Best has had a great preseason.
He constantly gets penalties. He has like 2 or 3 a game. I wish Brandon Jordan at ABC 12 could call, and he'll tell you all about Jeff Backus.
Dominic Raiola is one of the best centers in the league. True or false?
False.
Randy, what do you think about the Lions' offensive line?
It's serviceable at
serviceable.
best.
Serviceable at best.
Yeah,
that's his point.
The weapons they have are going to help them. You know, the offense. The offense is very good. I'm going to say very good. The offensive line, it works, but it's not good.
What do you think of what you saw of Javid Best in the preseason?
Fantastic. I mean, is he everything we've seen? You know, I mean, everything.
Maybe
we
not.
hoped for. I mean, as long as he could stay healthy, dude could be fantastic. And the Lions haven't seen a runner like that in a long time.
It seems like Jim Schwartz and Scott Linehan are really protecting their asset in Javid Best. In the 3rd preseason game, he only got 2 touches, 1 carry, which went for 51 yards, and 1 reception, which I think went for something like 13. And they took him out of the game. They said his leg was feeling a little stiff. I don't think they played him at all last night. What do you think about that? Would you rather see him get knocks in the NFL preseason, or would you rather see him rested and ready to go week 1 in Chicago next Sunday?
Look, if I put my runner in the first play he busts a 50-yarder in a preseason, next play he catches and runs the ball pretty well, he's done.
Yeah,
I mean, there's no sense to keep him in there. He'll get his licks and all that stuff during the season. There's no need to put a runner like that out there for so long. Just like, I mean, the whole argument, too many preseason games, exactly. They don't need it in the preseason.
I agree.
You've seen what the kid can do. Done.
Then it's the Lions, and they're constantly injured. They always find a way to get into injury problems, so I wouldn't risk anything.
And this is that what you said right there, Mikey, is exactly the point on with the Lions. They always find a way to be worse than we hoped.
Yeah.
And this is why they could be a 3-win team as opposed to something better. You know, but there are more factors this year. I will give you that. I mean, we do think the Bears are worse. But at the same time, you know, the passing attack that Cutler will provide may be exactly what the Achilles heel of the Lions is. Quick, lots of throws, lots of quick passes. That's Cutler's forte, always has been.
Here's the thing. I don't think, this is my last point on the Lions. I'm going to ask you another question in a second here, Randy. I don't think the teams are going to be able to run on the Lions like they've run on the Lions in the past. I think Ndamukong Suh is going to clog up that middle. I've loved what I've seen from Cliff Averill, Landon Cohen. Vanden Bosch has been a beast in the preseason. You've got Tyson Jackson, or not Tyson Jackson, the other Jackson. 2 other pickups.
Grady.
Free agent pickups. I think your defensive line is solid, and I think you've maybe got 1 linebacker that's a pro in Julian Peterson. You've got a couple others that are serviceable. I think the Lions are going to add depth when the waiver wire comes down today and tomorrow before they have to cut it down to a 53-man roster. I think the linebacking core is going to improve, and I think Dre Bly is going to be all right in the nickel spot. I think he's better than maybe any other nickel in the league, let's be honest, because, he could be a starter for the Lions, but they're going to keep him in the nickel spot and have him shut down slot receivers, and I like that. I think Louis Delmas is top 10 safeties in the league. I mean, that's not necessarily generous, right? I mean, that's a third of the league. I think he's top 10. In some spots, I think the Lions back 8 and back 9 are going to be all right, and I think they're going to shut down the run with that defensive line, and so that's going to force teams to throw on them. Now, that could be a good thing. That could be a bad thing. But I think teams are going to lose a 2-dimensional game against the Lions.
I don't understand the optimism after years of being beaten down That's the whole message here. Is there's no reason to be optimistic or think they're going to perform to the level you think they're going to perform to after every year, every time we have this discussion, and every time there's sports talk with the Detroit Lions, everybody gets excited, and then they always find a way to disappoint.
Randy, who you got in the Super Bowl?
Who do I got in this? All right, you're right, Paul. The run defense will be better. The defensive line will be more solid. But asking them to go pick up good linebackers on the waiver wire.
Not good linebackers, serviceable linebackers. Guys that can add depth. I'm not talking about a starter, but I'm talking about someone that can come in and not be an embarrassment. Someone that's not Zach Follett.
Okay. I see. I will say that they do have a chance to do that. But even saying that, I just think they're too weak on the corners. And if Delmas is healthy, then that makes a big difference. But it doesn't look good. I mean, it just doesn't look good right now. And you know what, Dre Bly, I have no problem with Dre Bly. He's older, yes, but he's a playmaker, and we already saw that. I mean, and like I said, you can't judge too much for the preseason, but I seen him make plays already.
Yeah.
I seen him have one big interception and a couple big plays.
I think he's excited to be back in Detroit.
He's
got Johnny Damon syndrome.
Yeah.
Who do you got in the Super Bowl, Randy?
Boy, I'm going to be honest with you. I'm not ready to make that pick yet. I'm not ready. I need to see more of the Patriots before I can rule them out.
I think you're 2 years too late with the Patriots, Randy.
Yeah, you might want to get back to me after week 2 or so, and I can have a more solid feel on that.
How does Green Bay and Baltimore sound?
I'm sorry, what was that?
How does Green Bay and Baltimore sound?
No, I'm not sold on Green Bay. I'm just not. And Baltimore, I'm not sold on either. I think they have improved, and I think Flacco is going to take a huge leap forward this year because Baltimore knows how to throw now.
And Anquan Bolden is money, dude.
Joe Flacco has the best unibrow in the NFL, by the way.
Agree or disagree?
Agree.
Agreed.
I can't think of one player that has a better one.
Randy, we were trying to have you on the show last week. We did a big topic on fantasy football, what the picks were going to be, what you thought about the changing game of fantasy football, how running backs are sort of falling in value, wide receivers and quarterbacks maybe moving up on the draft boards. We talked at great length about fantasy football, and we teased ahead you, sir. We teased you because you are taking a year hiatus from fantasy sports. Is that true?
That's 100%
a 1-year hiatus from what most American males thrive on this time of year, and you are turning up your nose to it. Randy, what are you thinking?
Okay, listen, first of all, I've been a fantasy junkie for years. From the first day I learned how to do it, okay?
That's what she said.
But I've learned as I've grown over the years, it actually diminished my love of the sports. First it was baseball, and now it's football. I think I found myself rooting against teams that I liked because I had some stinking wide receiver who needed, a catch or a touchdown to win a game. I found myself just really not watching the games for games, but watching them for points and cha-ching every time somebody gets 5 yards. And it just, you know what? That's not what the games are all about. And I'm just wanting to get back to liking football and what football is. And also, one more thing is it takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of time, and I think it's time to move past that for me. And it may be more than a year hiatus. I'm going to miss it. Okay, I'm going to miss that, but I'm going to see if I miss it enough to come back.
You making breakfast right now? You're the plates clanging in the background. One thing that I said to you, Randy, a couple weeks ago, and I want to hear what you say about this again live on the air on Flint Talk Radio, on flinttalkradio.com. Randy, you have a man room set up, as a lot of guys do. It's in your garage. You've got the TV. You've got an old anchor desk set up in there. We watch Monday Night Football after basketball on Mondays during football season. I predict the Vegas odds, the over and under is at week 3 when Randall W. Scott III looks at that TV in the Monday Night Football game and says, son of a bitch, I wish I had a fantasy football team. I need something to root for when it's the Cowboys against, the Falcons, and nobody cares about the game. I think what fantasy has done for me is it's made me a better fan because it makes me more knowledgeable about teams, about players, especially in IDP leagues when you're picking defensive players. It makes me know who's who, and it gives me a rooting interest in games I don't care about.
Agreed.
Randy, how are you going to replace that gaping hole in your sports life? You're a big sports fan. You're a Cubs fan. You hate on the Red Wings all the time. I know you're really into sports. How do you have something as a part of that big as a part of your sports life and then just take it away?
You know what? I think this is how I'm going to do it. I think I'm going to get back to the basics. Like let me explain this for just a second.
You're going to listen to games on the radio?
When you say yeah, you're watching games that don't matter. Either I'm not going to watch that game that doesn't matter because there's something else I could be doing with my life, or number two, I'm going to be rooting for the things that matter. Like for instance, I had a thing. When I started formulating this in my head, I started seeing all these players in the NFL getting busted for steroids, stuff like that, and nobody really cared. And to me, that was just disgraceful. And so I wouldn't put those players on my team, and if I had them, I would drop them. Like there was several times where Julius Peppers got busted, and I had him on my team, so I dropped him. And same thing, I wouldn't draft Deshaun Merritt. We play with defensive players all the time, so I wouldn't pick those players, And to me, I can't root for those guys. I can't have them on my team. The TOs, the people who might have had big numbers at one point, Jay Cutlers, they may have had big numbers, but they weren't good for the team. They were bad for football, I think that kind of stuff just started disgusting me because those guys were being rooted for, and they're really trash. They're not part of what the game is. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, and you're an adult now, too. You just got married.
Right.
You have a job. It's a lot of dedication. It becomes addicting. You constantly checking the waiver wire, seeing who you can pick up, who you can drop. I can see that.
Randy, thanks for joining us. Hey, one more question. You just talked about NFL players. We're going to get into this in the second hour of the show, maybe in the first hour if we have enough time. Ben Roethlisberger appealing his suspension tomorrow, I believe, to Roger Goodell, trying to get it reduced to 3 games. We'll talk about that in greater length, but he's one of those guys that I wouldn't think you'd have on your fantasy team because I think you have a problem with his personality. What do you think about the Ben Roethlisberger incident?
Ben Roethlisberger has been an idiot for a while now, and they cannot reduce that suspension. I'm okay with reducing it 2 games. It's good if you redeem yourself, and he gave him that option. But asking for those extra games, that's crap. And the second reason why I'm pro-suspending Roethlisberger is because Leftwich suffered a knee injury yesterday, and that means Charlie Batch is the man.
Dennis
He's gonna
Dixon's
be
the
in
man.
Pittsburgh.
Dennis Dixon's going to be the man in Pittsburgh.
Charlie.
Dennis Dixon's had a great preseason.
I'm wishing that it was Charlie Batch.
Yeah, me too.
What's Joe Harrington doing right now? He should have a starting job somewhere by this time, right?
Well, I think so, at least for a few games.
I heard he's going to call into the show later.
He's probably not doing anything.
Yeah.
All right, Randy, well, thanks for joining us. Feel free to call us back in the second hour or anytime you want to pipe in.
All right. Fantastic show, friends. Fantastic show.
Take care of yourself, buddy.
Thanks, Randy.
All right, let's reset a little bit. We were talking Lions preseason. We're talking about the Ben Roethlisberger incident, which we'll get into more in depth a little later in the show. You are watching Unsportsmanlike Conduct on FlintTalkRadio.com. You can reach us anytime via the Chat Now link at the top of the page. You can hit us up on Facebook, Paul Gerke and Mike McManaman, or you can call in, get your opinions on the show. The number is 810-208-1854. Let's move on to some college football. The college football season started last night with a slate of games, including a couple of ranked teams. Ohio State rolled over Marshall last night, 45-7. Miami beat up on somebody. USC won their first game, 49-36 against Hawaii, who never gets any love. Pittsburgh lost to Utah. Pittsburgh ranked 15 in the preseason polls. They lose in overtime to the Stormin' Mormons from Utah, 27-24. We've got a whole slate of games coming up on Saturday, including games the University of Michigan, Michigan State playing. The Chippewas won their first game last night. There's another big game coming up this weekend between Boise State and Virginia Tech. It's actually a Monday night game. Boise State ranked 3rd in the preseason polls, not belonging to a BCS conference, which is absolutely huge for them. And Virginia Tech ranked 10th in the nation. That's a huge first week game because a lot of times you see big ranked teams play mid-major conference, WAC teams, MAC teams, people like Central Michigan or Western or Marshall, as OSU did. We're going to get to that game in just a second. First, I want to talk a little local sports. It came down this week. The Big Ten has announced that they are splitting up the divisions. This is an announcement we've been waiting for a while. The Big Ten is essentially the Big 12. There's 12 teams now. There used to be 11. At one point, I guess there was 10. There's 2 divisions yet to be named. They were officially announced this week. Mike, what do you think about the way the conferences are split up? For those of you not in the know, one division holds Ohio State, Penn State, Wisconsin, Illinois, Purdue, and Indiana. The other division with Michigan, who is, of course, split up from Ohio State, which is the big controversy. Michigan, Nebraska, Minnesota, Northwestern, Iowa, and the Sparties from Michigan State.
Well, I think as of right now, the X division with Ohio State, Penn State, Wisconsin, Illinois, Purdue, and Indiana looks a lot better than the O division, maybe when Michigan returns to more prominence. But I don't think it's as big of a deal as I didn't think they were going to have the rivalry crossover games. So I think that takes away a lot of the complaints that a lot of people had, that Ohio State wasn't going to get to play Michigan. If there are complaints, call in. I don't know what the problem is. I don't see what the big deal is. They had to do it. I mean, there's 12 teams.
The way this is set up, we talked about this last week on the show. Michigan and Ohio State could play twice in the same season. This isn't going to happen next year because Nebraska is going to roll over that division, I think. I think Nebraska wins their division. Michigan State might finish in second, but the Hawkeyes are good. Iowa might finish second, too. Michigan State maybe finishes third or fourth. In the other division, I think Ohio State runs with it. Penn State is solid. Wisconsin is solid. Illinois can compete, but I think that they're really going to roll that division, Ohio State. So maybe let's say 2-3 years down the road, Michigan wins their division, Ohio State wins their division. They would play twice. They would play in the last game of the season, the way it's always been, the big Buckeye MSU or Michigan rivalry, and then they'd play in a conference championship game to determine the winner of the Big Ten. So essentially, the last game of the season loses its significance because you're playing them again the next week. What do you think about that? We talked about, for those of you who haven't watched last week's show, Mike thinks it's a good idea that they're playing twice in the same season, right? Or you think it's a bad idea?
I don't think it's a big deal at all. I don't see that.
Maybe if they played in week 3 and then
People
the last
love
week of the
watching
season.
it. I don't.
But on back-to-back weeks?
That would be. I mean,
that's the only
assuming
way
a
they'll
lot.
play twice
Yeah,
in the same season if
that's
it's on
assuming a
back-to-back
lot.
weeks.
Yeah.
They'll never play twice in the same season unless they both win their division.
Yeah.
Is that good for football or bad?
In that circumstance, I imagine that would be bad. It would
Yeah.
get kind of tiresome to see the same team. I don't think it would be horrible, though. I think it would still be an entertaining game.
I still think you're going to hear the pissing and moaning when
You will.
Michigan wins the first game against Ohio State to clinch their division, and then Ohio State wins the conference championship game, and you're left with this look on your face like, what the hell? We just beat these guys a week ago.
Yeah.
I think I'm gonna weigh in here. I think probably it'd give you more intensity for like a revenge game.
Yeah, that's true. That's
true. But the first game, especially,
yeah.
like, let's say theoretically, Michigan has already clinched their conference, John, before they get into the last week of season against Ohio State. That game is essentially a throwaway now. You don't even care, because especially if you're not competing for a national championship. And then the only important game is the second game. So let's say you come out and roll Ohio State and then lose a tight one in the second game. You might be an astronomically better team, but lose that 1 in a million game in the second game, and you're left with a sour look on your face, basically.
There's a lot of problems in college football with playoffs and scheduling
Agreed.
and BCS. I don't think this is a big one. If that happens, and it's not going to happen, I don't think anytime soon that we're going to have to worry about it. Sorry, Michigan fans. But in that case, it would be kind of disappointing to see a game that didn't mean anything. But then the next week, you'd probably be able to get over it pretty quickly because you get to watch the same game again.
Right.
And after that, everybody be upset for a week. And then once Michigan wins, everybody's happy again.
Would they play that conference championship at a neutral site? Because that would be ridiculous, wouldn't it? Like, let's say it's the Big House's turn to host the game between Ohio State and Michigan. Michigan wins in Ann Arbor. And then who hosts the conference championship game?
Yeah, I don't know.
Does it alternate between the 12?
They had an hour-long special, but I didn't watch, so maybe they discussed that. But
I don't know. I'm not as big of a college football fan as I am an NFL fan, and it takes a little time for me to get into the college football season.
yeah, because they're constantly rotating players. Players are being drafted.
Some team with 3 quarterbacks. It's hard. I love Michigan. It's hard for me to get behind a team where I don't know who's going to be the signal caller. You know, Gardner, Forcier, Robinson. It's gonna be tough for me to follow that team.
I think Robinson has the job, doesn't he?
I don't think he's announced it yet. I don't think Rich Rod. I think Rich Rod's made up his mind, but I don't think he's announced it.
Yeah, him and his shoelaces.
I think all 3 are going to get to play in
I'm
week
sure.
1.
Yeah.
Week 1, which is tomorrow, kicks off the University of Michigan football schedule. They are playing UConn, the Huskies, in Ann Arbor at 3:30. Who you got?
Michigan.
Yeah, I think Michigan beats UConn as well. Now, UConn has sort of had a resurgence in their football program. If I'm not mistaken, they had a pretty good season last year. We're going to talk in great detail about the schedules of the University of Michigan and the Michigan State Spartans in just a moment.
If I had my laptop, I could give you better analysis with the statistics and stuff, but I don't. But I'm also wondering, is this going to be brought on for basketball? I thought it was kind of discussed. I mean, is it for every sport? Are they going to do it for my field hockey team at Michigan State? I mean, who knows what's going to happen with them?
You know what? I really don't know.
You know, when they have the big Purdue-Michigan State field hockey rivalry at the end of the season, what's going to happen with that?
I honestly don't know.
I honestly don't know anything about field hockey either, but I'm just...
Didn't you play field hockey at Aquinas?
I played floor hockey.
Floor hockey.
I was
my fault.
Dynamic goalie, and I would take out people's legs and dive all over the place. And yeah, that was pretty intense.
Let's get right into the Michigan schedule, Mike. You say they win against Connecticut in week 1. Week 2,
Sure.
at Notre Dame in South Bend.
Loss.
Why are you so high on Notre Dame? Lou Holtz over
Tell ya.
here.
I'm telling you, I am not a huge college football fan, and I don't know a lot about the sport. So that's probably part of it. I'm
what
just
it
being
is.
honest with you. I don't know a lot
You
about
just like the
college football.
colors, right?
They're beautiful uniforms, and there's a lot of tradition in the Gipper.
I say they can beat.
Whatnot.
I say they can beat Notre Dame.
And
I'd like to see
I'm
Brian
not
Kelly
a huge
win.
Michigan fan either. So
Brian-
a lot of this is,
Yeah.
I mean, I like Michigan basketball, though, just because there's a lot of people from Flint, people I've played with. But Michigan
Talk a
football,
little bit about your experience before we get more into college football. Talk about your experience playing against Michigan athletes when you were in high school.
I played against Zach Gibson. He's a good guy.
Tell the people who Zach Gibson is.
Zach Gibson went to Grand Blanc. He played with Kalen Morris. Played against him. He's a good guy. I played against him in U of M Flint intramural basketball not too long ago.
How did that work out?
He might go play overseas. I played pretty well for not, for him playing for Michigan and that whole bag of worms. I played for
Bag of worms.
Yeah, I don't know.
That's not an expression I'm familiar with.
No, it's a new one.
You also played against Tom Herzog at Michigan State, right?
I did, and he transferred. I'm not really sure to where.
He should just transfer to some D3 college because that D1 experience at Michigan State is
Something like
not
that.
working out.
Yeah, I never thought he's extremely tall. He's a good shot blocker, but I didn't think he ever had like the basketball instinct. I hope Tom Herzog isn't watching. I apologize, Tom.
I sincerely doubt Tom Herzog's
Yeah.
tuning in. Back to football. Michigan plays week 3 against Massachusetts in Ann Arbor. I don't know anything about UMass's football team. I'll just say it's a win. I think Michigan also beats Bowling Green, if you want to talk about teams that aren't in BCS conferences. So they're 4-0 for me so far. At Indiana, I say that's a win too.
See, from what I've listened to sports talk, no, you know what? I think on sports talk they said that it's possible they win the first three or four games.
If they can beat Notre Dame, there's really nobody else big on their schedule early in the season. And this is classic Michigan athletic director scheduling right here, where they just stack the beginning of the season with meatball opponents. And it's kind of backfired the last couple of years because Michigan's lost some of those games they should win. At Indiana, and then October 9th against Michigan State. I think that's their first loss of the season. I'm not a big Michigan State fan, but I think they're gonna have their way with Michigan for the most part. Against Iowa, their homecoming game on October 16th. I think that's a loss too. The Hawkeyes are solid. Penn State on October 30th, the night before Halloween. I think that's a loss. I think Penn State year in and year out is a better team for the most part.
Yeah.
Linebacker U, November 6th against Illinois. We'll give them a win. Purdue, I think they lose to Purdue. I think they lose to Wisconsin, and I think they lose to Ohio State.
Yeah, I think
So-
Rich Rod's on the out. He's going to be shown the exit after this season.
I sincerely hope Rich Rod is not the coach at the end of the season. Before the end of the season, this is, I guess, what I'm implying. I hope he gets fired mid-season.
Yeah,
I'm not a fan of the Rich Rod experiment. I think it turned out horribly for Michigan.
It did.
So I've got Michigan at, I think, a game above 500, if I'm not mistaken. I could go and recount. I mean, do you mostly agree? It's really going to come down to that Notre Dame game. If Michigan loses to Notre Dame in week 2 of the season, I can see a free fall. I don't think you're going to lose to Massachusetts, but I think it's really going to affect your Big Ten schedule. And I don't think that if they can't beat Notre Dame, I don't think they're going to beat anybody in the Big Ten. I mean, you might beat Indiana You might scrape out a win against Purdue or Illinois, but I don't know. I think the Big Ten is just going to have their way with Michigan, which is good for them for next season because you're coming into that other division where the talent is, like you said, stacked in the OSU conference.
Yeah.
Let's look at the Sparty schedule real quick. They open up against Western Michigan tomorrow in East Lansing. I love the Broncos, Mike, but I think Michigan State's going to win that game too.
Yeah.
Florida Atlantic in the second week. I mean, that could be an upset, right?
Yeah,
Florida Atlantic had a pretty good team, if I'm not mistaken, a couple years ago.
I'll give Michigan State a win.
Notre Dame in week 3, Northern Colorado in week 4. You can see
that Northern Colorado,
the Northern Colorado Avalanches.
Yeah,
God, nobody knows anything about Northern Colorado. Is that even a real team? So they're 4-0. I think they lose to Wisconsin. I said they beat Michigan. That's 5-1. I say they beat Illinois. That's 6-1. They're going to beat Northwestern. They're bad. That's 7-1. And all of a sudden, everyone starts talking Sparty, drinking the green Kool-Aid. This happens every year. I say they lose to Iowa. They're 7-2. But Sparty. We can still win the Big Ten. And then Michigan State, like they do every season, is going to lose a game they have no business losing. And that's going to be in Minnesota in their third to last week of the season. I say they lose to Minnesota. Then the free fall starts. They lose to Purdue. They lose to Penn State. I think they finish 7-5. As it turns out.
I can see that, yeah.
They might win one of those games and end up 8-4. They're not going to win the Big Ten, but I think at the end of the season, when everybody's just vamped for Sparty, they're going to lose a game that they have no business losing.
That tends to happen with the Spartans.
I like Mark D'Antonio, but to be honest, I just don't see him as like a closing coach, a guy that can come in at the end of the season and win the big games when he needs to.
Yeah, I don't know.
If you want to get in on the sports
I don't
talk.
see any reason why he can't be. If he could recruit better players. Michigan State football isn't like a really, like, I'm sure there's not like players just pining to come into Michigan State like they would Michigan, so I think that's part of the
Your
problem.
boy Drew Stanton's from Michigan State.
I know.
If you want to get on the college football talk, you know the number 810-208-1854. You are listening to Unsportsmanlike Conduct with Paul Gerke and Mike McManaman. We are nearing the close of our first hour. We're going to do 2 hours today, capitalizing on the Tom Sumner Worldwide Webcast time slot opening extravaganza, as you might say. We have tons more to talk about, especially regarding college football. We've got a couple big college football stories that we're going to touch on next. First, for me, this is an interesting topic. I don't know about for the rest of you. Boise State against Virginia Tech. This is a game coming up this Monday. We alluded to this earlier in the show. Boise State is ranked 3rd nationally in the preseason, and they do not belong to a BCS conference. The problem, we talk about this a lot with the BCS, is they don't have a playoff system.
Mm-hmm.
It's up to computer rankings to determine who the national championship competitors will be. They never give any love to teams outside of BCS conferences. Boise State has had, I believe, 2 undefeated seasons in the last couple of years and has not been to the national championship game.
Mm-hmm.
So Boise State being ranked 3rd in the nation in the preseason would tell you, the fan, that if Boise State runs the table again, they are guaranteed a spot in the national championship.
Yeah, you think so?
We just went through the schedule with Michigan playing against Connecticut in the first week. Michigan State has got Western. Ohio State played Marshall. These are 3 big reputable programs. Whether or not they're big competitive teams is left for you to decide. But these are big programs that play meatball, slow hand softball, old man pitch sort of teams in the first week of the season. But Boise State, a team that has never gotten any respect from the BCS computer system, is playing a ranked opponent in their first week of the season in Virginia Tech in Virginia. Why would you do that?
Something to prove, I guess. You want to show that, you want to start off getting people talking about Boise State football right off the bat, or you're just crazy and this is what people want to watch. I don't know.
It's either going to be the best scheduling move or the worst scheduling move in the history of college football, depending on the outcome of the game.
Yeah.
It is virtual suicide for Boise State if they lose that game in Virginia Tech.
Yeah.
I think it's one thing if it's a home game. I think it's not as crazy if it's a home game, but the fact that you're going on the road against the 10th ranked team in the nation and you finally have some preseason respect
Ballsy.
and a chance to go to the national championship.
Well, when they scheduled, did they know they were going to be ranked 3rd in the preseason, though?
No, not necessarily, but you had to know that you're going to be ranked pretty high.
Yeah. But they haven't been respected before, so they're probably...
I understand, but now are you kicking yourself? Because it is suicide if you lose that game, right? If Boise State loses the first game of the season, they have no respect for the rest of the season. Their season is essentially over before it ever started.
I don't think any of the players or the coaches are thinking about they're kicking themselves or they're disappointed that they have to play Virginia Tech. I think they're going to look at it like it's a good thing. When I played college basketball, there was some of that. We'd start off playing just really solid teams, and it gets you on a different gear than these other teams that are playing cupcakes teams.
That's true.
When you're a Michigan football team and you're playing like these really terrible teams and you're used to this terrible competition, and you can say like, no, we're going to go out and compete every week and we're going to be just fine, and it doesn't matter who we're playing, we're always going to play with this intensity. That's just locker talk. That's not how it really is. When you start off getting pumped up and starting to play really solid teams, I think they want to, if they start off with a win here, they have a better chance. This is what I imagine they're thinking. If they can start off with a win at Virginia Tech, they are going to have there's absolutely no reason why they shouldn't be able to run the table and why they shouldn't be, nobody's going to be able to say anything about them not being in the BCS, not being one of these top flight schools. If they can start off with this huge victory, nobody's going to be able to say anything. And I don't know if in years past they've done the same kind of scheduling.
They haven't.
That's the thing. If before people were like,
Maybe
it's Boise State
soft,
playing
right.
playing soft teams, it's not that big of a deal. But when they start playing top flight teams right off the bat, then people are talking already.
Maybe this wasn't possible when it came down to the scheduling time, but I would have liked to see this game later in the season where you want that buzz, you want that vibe, you want that talk when you're gearing up for hoping to get into the national championship.
But then
game
again,
with an
we're
undefeated
talking
season.
about it right now, and a lot of people are talking about it right now. So maybe that's what they want. People are talking about Boise State right off the bat.
Let me ask you one question about this, and then we'll move on. Who do you think it could hurt more, Virginia Tech losing their first game of the season or Boise State losing their first game of the season?
Boise State, because they are looked upon as being a possible BCS contender. They're number 3.
Virginia Tech is technically a contender too, and if Virginia Tech wins this game, it's a totally different story.
A lot of things have to happen, but Boise State is 3rd in the country, and they're predicted or thought of as one of the better teams in the nation. Obviously, it's number 3, but they're thought of as a possible national championship team. And I'd like to see that happen. I like their turf.
You just like the big blue turf.
Yeah,
I was just
it's
gonna get into
beautiful
that.
out there.
Mike's a big Smurf sympathist.
Who is they have a red turf now. I don't know where it's at, but they just had a team build a stadium with red AstroTurf. It's fascinating.
You're kidding me, right?
No, it's got to be bad for TV.
I think it's bad for the grass if you spray paint it red too. Yeah. Red turf football field on Google.
Eastern Washington.
Eastern Washington.
It's ridiculous looking.
That looks like if hell had a football team, that's
like
that's where they'd play.
Yeah, looks like the field is on fire.
You got to see this. Go Google red turf.
Or Eastern
But make sure that
Washington.
the safe search is on. And don't click images because I'm not sure what you'll find.
Yeah.
I've seen weirder things with less conspicuous searches on Google.
One time when my student workers typed in ESP, he was typing in for ESPN. He missed an N and hit the M, and he got a porn site.
ESPM?
ESPM, yeah.
I'm not sure what kind of pornography that is. Mike, you've got the Trojan viruses in your computer. Maybe you can answer that question.
I was actually probably the Trojan viruses came from promoting this glorious.
What are you promoting Flint Talk Radio to that gives you Trojan horses?
These podcast directories and such. And then,
I should have known Mike had a virus on his computer because when he opened it up this morning, he went, nee!
Yeah.
He had a horse.
That wasn't even clever. That was just stupid. You're an idiot.
This is way too early to start a radio show. What happened to our 12:30 time slot, John? We got about a minute and a half left in the first hour of the show. We've got tons of stuff to get to in the second hour. I hope we can get through all this. You saw the chat on our Facebook page throughout the duration of the week. The big topic surrounding the culmination of the college football season: should college athletes get paid? We're going to touch on that. We're going to talk in great detail about the different schemes we came up with as to why or why not college athletes should be paid. I also want to touch on the NHL contract bargaining agreement. These monstrous contracts that are coming down in the NHL, they just shot down another Ilya Kovalchuk contract with the New Jersey Devils, some astronomical 17-year deal, and now they're reviewing other contracts of other superstars, including Roberto Luongo, Marian Hossa, etc. We're going to touch on that towards the end of the show. We're also going to touch on a couple funny stories in the world of sports, and we're going to talk. We spoke with Randy a minute ago about Ben Roethlisberger and his suspension and how he's lobbying with Roger Goodell, the NFL commissioner, to get it reduced to 3 games. We're going to hit on that on the other side of the show. you need to stay with us. And you can call in anytime, 810-208-1854. Get your opinions heard on the show. You can also join us on the flinttalkradio.com webpage. There's a chat now link at the very top of the page. You can talk to the host. You can talk to John, who's running the board back there. And we hope you can join us for the second hour. We're going to reset the show. We're talking Lions preseason. We're talking college football. It's a football extravaganza today, Mike.
Yeah.
I hope you can stay with us. We'll be back in just a second.